Hey friends, welcome back to Genuine Life Recovery. I'm excited to be joined by Juliet Hahn. She is the Chief Communications Officer at FetTech. So this is the company transforming medicine with innovative healing products. That's cool. She's also a podcast host, a keynote speaker, content creator, and she's passionate about giving people a platform to share their stories, just like Genuine Life Recovery. She is a co-host of Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed, raising awareness about dyslexia alongside former NHL player Brent Sapel. This is so cool because he was on the previous episode. Guys, awesome. And if you have a chance to go back and listen, please do. Wait, I'm demanding that you listen to it. Exploring the challenges of dyslexia, strengths, mental health impacts, and the connection between dyslexia and anxiety is kind of what Juliet and I are going to be talking about, and also addiction, which is what Brent and I struggled with. So what's cool, Juliet, is that we're both brilliant because we're both dyslexic. So
Right.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. And I'm so happy that we were put in touch. I love when people meet different people and they're like, wait, I have someone you should meet. And so I think that's like such a beautiful thing when worlds collide when they're supposed to.
I know. Well, and it was so cool having Brent on because I grew up in Alaska, which, doesn't have an NHL team, but I always thought they did because I always went to hockey games all the time, but it was like minor league. And then I guess they do now, but it's from Seattle or something. But it was just fun because I grew up with a friend who had an ice rink in her backyard and her dad was a hockey coach. And so we would go to all these hockey games for free. And
That is fun.
So yeah. So when I talked to him, we both had, he's like, yeah, I don't like summer. I'm like, I get that.
Yeah.
We were both dyslexic and I knew what hockey was. Like then I went to California. I'm like, it's this thing with a stick and yeah, nobody got it. So,
Right.
Anyway.
You came from cold climates. Right.
Right. So our journeys with dyslexia, anxiety, I want to talk about how it really shaped your experience, particularly in the mental health realm. I know that you did not struggle with addiction or anything like that, but it was just, it's just weird growing up feeling like what's wrong with me or I'm different or, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you had mentioned that you dealt with a lot of just kind of some anxiety and you had tricks, right? We all have tricks to sort of survive and get through it. So just kind of talk to me about, sort of your story, right?
Yes.
When you found out what happened, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, no worries. And it's, I definitely didn't struggle with addiction the same way as you or Brent did.
Mm-hmm.
I did, and I'm now haven't drank in 2 years, but I definitely drank more than I should have because of anxiety. Right. And now I'm very aware there was a lot of times that I was using alcohol to kind of to muster through things.
Yes.
Which is always an interesting thing. But yes, I never, I experimented. I lived in New York City, in the late 90s, 2000s, had a lot of fun, but it wasn't something that, I didn't use it as a crutch. But I definitely experimented and knew I have a sister that actually struggled with addiction pretty fiercely and a nephew.
Yeah.
So I was also very like, okay, I know what that did to my family, so I'm not going to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would think living in New York would be just like being on drugs every day.
The dopamine hits, you get them all over the place.
Just like,
I love it's one of my favorite places. I love cities.
I've never been there. I got to go there.
But anyway. God, you have to. It's it's the best. I had all three of my babies there. I love the city or I love the beach. Like I love like the water and stuff like that. I find it very calming, but I find cities calming. I love that energy of it. I fit right in and it lights me up. But I know that that's not the question you asked me. So I'm going to go back to what you asked. So it's interesting. I wasn't diagnosed with really anything until I was in college, and it really started with ADHD. Family history, my dad, my sister, we definitely all struggled with attention, with, being too much being loud, bull in
Hmm.
china shop, all these things that as
Yeah.
a kid I was, that was me. Oh, when Juliet comes into a room, all of these different things, labeled
She's not
as
acting like a proper lady.
no. Oh, there was no proper lady. I was in the mud. My mom had to, there's five of us. I was always dressed last. I was on top of the refrigerator before I could walk. I, was in the ocean before I could swim. I kept my parents very, very busy.
Hmm.
They do say it was wonderful for the most part, but I was an exhausting kid.
Yeah.
Didn't I kept everyone alive driving from New Jersey to Florida. I basically stood and talked to my dad. And before we were supposed to have seatbelts, we were all in a station wagon. Everyone had their spot.
Right. Yeah.
I stood in that little spot right in between and just chatted to my dad the whole time he drove. We joke that I kept him alive because I didn't stop. So I was
Wow.
always that. But it's really interesting because there was I was the funny one, right? I can make
Uh-huh.
everyone laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was easy. Like I loved being around people. I loved the energy I would get from people talking to people and stuff. But
Hmm.
in the classroom, you can't do that. And I could not learn by sitting still. That was not how I learned. So school and then being dyslexic and
Yeah.
having dyscalculia, and probably
What's
dysgraphia.
that?
So dyscalculia is the math portion.
That's the one I have, but they always said it was spelling, and yet I'm in advanced reading as a kid in remedial math, and makes no
So
sense.
so
But
right. So you probably are more dyscalculia than dyslexia, but back then, they
yeah.
didn't really know. But and I wasn't diagnosed with any of these until college. However, my
Oh.
mom had an understanding of that I struggled, but I was the athlete. I was the
Hmm.
dumb girl, and I grew up in an area that everyone was really good at everything. It was a pretty affluent town, and it was, this is just her, right? I was in
Hmm.
special reading in third grade when literally the rest of the class, except the troublemaker boy, and I went to special reading. Everyone else went to gifted and talented. So that was my journey, and I had to fake it because
Mm.
it was like, this is just what you get. But it was a lot that I didn't understand because I couldn't process what the teacher was saying, and it just wasn't coming down on paper. I did not do well
Wow.
until I was diagnosed in college. And but there was understanding. My mom was a kindergarten teacher, and my older
Hmm.
sister had a lot of the same learning struggles, but hers were a little bit worse, where she couldn't just kind of get by. And
Yeah.
so it was like I had a lot of help at home. I had a lot of confidence because it was like, you're good at all these other things. And I really excelled on the athletic field. I was always picked first for gym, right? Over the boys. I
Hmm.
was the fastest girl in elementary school. I was the fastest kid in elementary school. No one could catch me. It was like, oh my gosh, like I could just
Nice.
blow by. So I had a lot of those strengths, and I had a lot of friends because I was very personable, very intuitive. I knew how to reach people where they were. I would let people see,
Hmm.
seen, and heard. And it was something when you are ADHD, wildly ADHD. I mean, I was the girl that was wildly ADHD. I presented as the boy, right? So, like, girls in the
Hmm.
past and even now get very undiagnosed because it's the opposite. You're not outwardly. Like, a lot of women get their ADHD is internalized. Mine was very presented as a boy. So like I also was very tomboy. And so that's, how I always was someone that worried about things. And now I know that that's anxiety. I always
Yeah.
worried when my dad left that he was going to get hit by a car and die. When I was on
Hmm.
an airplane, the airplane was going to blow up. How can
I
I
know.
protect my sister? How, my sister's doing this. But I wouldn't say, but I probably internalized it more. Maybe every once in a while I would say it. And it probably was
Hmm.
like, okay, why are you worrying about that? Don't worry about that. Right.
Right.
So there was an early anxiety. Now we know with ADHD and dyslexia and dyscalculia, all the things that I have, that is a typical thing. Now, I don't think it was
Really?
yeah, that's all like on the, um, it's all on the same spectrum. So like there's autism, like there's all of these different things that are on the same spectrum, but anxiety is tied. If you speak to anyone really with a
Hmm.
lot of these learning, there's an anxiety thing. And yes, can people say, is it the egg before the chicken or the chicken before the egg, whatever that
Right.
term is.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of that. And yeah, I think some people are more predispositioned for
Hmm.
anxiety and their levels are different, just like ADHD. There's levels of ADHD.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when I was diagnosed in college, I'll never forget because I tried to drop out 35 times. I played two sports in college. I was getting highly recruited. We won states every year. Like when I tell you, I came from like a really, really powerful academic and athletic community, where you were early recruited. And I was getting recruited. I mean, I had like Harvard was interested in me for field hockey.
Wow.
I mean, I was like, I couldn't even send my grades in. I was like, that's cool, but oh my God, that's so embarrassing. I can't send my grades in. I would never get into Harvard. I mean, I barely was getting C's. Like I was really struggling. And then
what sport was it,
so
Juliet?
I played field hockey and lacrosse in college. And so I played both of those.
Hockey?
Field
oh my
hockey.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I don't even know what that is. So that you and
Not ice
you and
hockey.
Brent have that in common.
It's very different, but yeah.
Oh, is it?
Okay. It's with a stick and a wood ball, but it's on grass, and it's a very European sport, but it is a lot of females do it. But it's a man's European sport, but females do field hockey.
Let me tell you this. I was pretty athletic myself as far as skiing, but I will say that no one could ever beat me in the potato sack race.
I love that.
I'm just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
To this day, you can't beat me in the potato sack race. Anyway, I digress. But
I love that.
So you're really good at this stuff because, this is what's so funny is with dyslexia, we're like really, really highly intelligent in certain areas, but that we're told that we're stupid because, I was told, your daughter will never amount to anything. And what's interesting, like Einstein was dyslexic. So a lot of dyslexics go on to do these amazing things, and maybe you can relate to this, but yet at the same time, certain tasks, like just trying to find my way to the grocery store would be overwhelming.
I have no direction. I have to
so
use
people
GPS.
Don't get that, like they just, so they see these basic things and they think you're dumb because they have no idea all those other like things that are happening. Right. So, so you can relate to that. So you kind of develop ways to survive around this and sort of hide it, or like I can remember walking in 8th grade and I'd walk past the remedial math class with my friend. Oh, where are you going? Oh, math. I would try to just like wait till they got to their thing so they wouldn't have to see that I was in that. And I mean, stuff like that, that's just sucked.
Sucks. I mean, and another thing people don't realize is like left and rights. A lot of dyslexics don't know their, and I don't know my left and rights. And even if I wear my wedding ring, I still have to process. So like doing yoga, I'm constantly looking the other way, or I have to think so hard when they say left. I have to literally like squeeze my head and put my L out. And I'm a 50-year-old woman. Like, so when I would tell people that, or if like you're driving with someone, they'll go like left, I have to pause because I need to be like, which way, which is left. So there's all of these little incurnicities. I think that's the correct way to say that are, and it's interesting because communication has always been my strength, but that doesn't, in school, you can communicate, but you're learning out of a book. So it was like when I would talk my way out of things, teachers didn't understand that I actually really struggled on paper and pen. And so then like any discussion, I was always the one in the beginning. Like I could run a discussion, even if I didn't read it, I was just intuitively know where the story was going to go because I know I know stories. That's where I excel. Yeah. That is my gift.
Visual.
And so teachers would be like, okay, you're just not trying. Like, why aren't you trying if I failed a test? And I'd be like, no, I am trying. And they're like, okay, fine. If you want to pretend that and you don't want to put the effort in, my guidance counselor all the time told me I was never going anywhere. You're never going anywhere. I had a teacher call me retarded in front of the entire class when I had to read out loud. So I had a lot of getting banged down, but I was a very fiery spitfire kind of kid. I stood up. I yelled at the teacher that called me retarded. I ran to the principal, got her in trouble. Not on purpose, but like I called her a bitch. I was like, you're a bitch. And I ran out. But like innately, I always stood up for myself. And I did not grow up in a family where that you disrespected adults. Like again, my mom was a kindergarten teacher, like very respectful. But I always knew that like, you're not going to make me feel dumb. Like I'm not, even though I feel internally dumb, you're not going to outwardly embarrass me. So I was very fiery and like always like stood up. And then so in college, when it was like, okay, I was like, I can't do this, Mom. I tried to drop out 35 times and I saw a commercial on attention deficit. And it was right after I came out of a giant lecture and I was like, I could hear the tapping of the pen. I could hear everyone's noises. I was counting the red shirts. I was looking how many cute boys, and all of a sudden the lecture was over and it was like, we had a huge test the next day. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God. I,
Right.
I didn't hear anything and I couldn't take any notes. I can't spell. I can't do any of this. I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I saw this commercial and I called my mom and I said, I think I have ADHD. And she's like, yeah, honey, you probably do. But like, we were never going to medicate you. Like, what does that do? We're not a medicine house. Like, we were very clean, very healthy. Like, you didn't take
Uh-huh.
Advil. Like, we didn't do any of that. So it was like, it was not even a thought. Um, and I was like, okay, I need to see this doctor.
Wow.
I took meds for 10 years
Mhm.
and that in itself, I actually got on the honor roll. I became really good in school. However, I became someone that was like, I need to study all the time. I started working like crazy hard, even though I
Mhm.
was working hard before. It was a different, stopped playing sports, got into communications, radio, television, film. And that was really amazing. But taking meds because I had ADHD and dyslexia and all these things, there was a lot of shame that I was like, I have to
Mm.
take something to be able to like
Function? Mhm.
function,
F
like
fu or have self-esteem, you know?
well,
And I'm right there with you. That was me. Mhm.
yeah, and I have to say, Jody, it was really interesting because I had a lot of self-esteem. It's like a really interesting thing. I had a lot of confidence,
Mhm.
and this it was a weird like dirty secret. It was like
Okay.
because I this is what's so crazy. I used to like I lived in New York, as I said, and I was in advertising. I used to go and like I would interview for any job, even if I was not like qualified, because I would be like, I'm going to get that job. I'm so good. Like I am so personable. Anyone's going to want to hire me. I know, and then I would figure it out. I was hired. Like my
Yeah.
friends would be like, "Wait, you got the job?" And I'm like, "I do." No idea what I'm going to do because I don't fucking know what I'm. Excuse me, I don't mean to curse, but like I don't know what I'm going to do. But I would figure it out once I got in there. So I had
Yeah.
tons of confidence. Sometimes too much confidence that I was like, I can
Yeah.
figure this
Yeah.
out because I'm clever and this and that. But it was this thing, like even when I would like date my husband now, I remember dating, starting to date him, and I would have to take my meds in the morning. And I was like, I'm not like, I was embarrassed. Like, oh my God, I have to explain, like, well, I have attention deficit. But listen, it doesn't make
Yeah.
me, because there was all of those labels for what ADHD was back then. You were the
Right.
obnoxious close talker. No one wanted you. You had no sense of your own space. You were too much. You were all of these things. And I
Mhm.
didn't think that about myself because I was very intuitive. And I think it's also being a
That's
woman
good.
of
Yeah.
being like, okay, I can read that person. My energy is too much. I know how to bring it down. I can bring it down. All of these different things that I was
Yeah.
able to do because of how intuitive and really because of my ADHD and dyslexia. I mean, because of it was able to give me these superpowers that I was able to kind of navigate these things. But so taking the meds um, brought a whole new level of anxiety,
Mhm.
which was really interesting that I had to navigate. And then uh, going into parenthood was when my anxiety was really, really high. And it was because
Oh,
I
wow.
am all or nothing. Like I am
Yeah.
either this way or I'm this way. And I knew I wanted to raise, and like that was what I always wanted to do, be a mom. Like I decided to stay home. It was like that. I was so excited about that. But I knew if I was the fun person, which everyone was like, you're fun. You like, I would drop things in a second. I was like spontaneous, like really fun. I was
Uh-huh.
not going to raise proper kids. It
Yeah.
was going to be a
Yeah.
free for all. So I had to be so tightly wound with their schedule and what they were doing. I actually ended up,
Mhm.
obviously, when I had kids, I also stopped taking meds and I've never gone back. I use homeopathy that I love and it's all wonderful. Um, but I also knew I had to be so controlled in their routines or
Yeah.
things. I didn't never wanted to be the mom that forgot the library book. Like I was like, oh my God, I need to make sure. So I was so much anxiety ridden, even though no one would never have known that on the outside.
Right.
And that's where then I
Yeah.
also started drinking. Like after the kids went to bed, I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I need some fucking wine. Oh my God,
Mhm.
okay, I need some wine here. And that's
Yeah.
kind of that cycle of having those kind of like, okay, I want to raise these really good humans. So I need to make sure they're sleeping, they're eating healthy. Like everything was like very organized. And I would have friends that were also had kids at the same time and they're like, what's happening? I don't understand. Like okay, there's a routine here. Like you are so like this be free for all person. And now all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
you're like, the kids have to be in bed at 7 every night. Like if
Right.
it's 7:05, it's going to be a mess. So that's a lot of like where I think I really became aware of my anxiety. And then
Mm-hmm.
homeopathy definitely helps. I have to say, it definitely helps. And that's a whole nother podcast. But
Right. Wow. Oh my gosh. So you're self-medicating too because you're trying to sort of do stuff that doesn't really come natural, and then part of it, like I know for me was just I didn't want people to know certain things, and it kind of felt like, well, and like I've been in radio for 30 years, so it's always like on stage have to be perfect, do everything right, don't want to make a mistake because then you might know, which then now you're being sort of fake, right? The whole false front they talk about, feeling like an imposter, which was one of the things that I had. And maybe you can relate to this. Like you said, they have no idea. Like they would never think that I was drinking or that I had all these issues because I was always like all together, right? And
yeah.
that in itself is a lot of mental work. And so you could see why even though you didn't have the self-esteem issues, the anxiety came in, or with like Brent and I, the addiction, you could see all that because it's like we're told that we're stupid, right? But we don't really believe that, but then sometimes we do. And then, so I guess kind of talk about just and what you've seen in your work, just the connection between dyslexia and the various types of it and ADHD and just addiction and or mental health challenges.
Yeah. And I mean, and we do talk about this on Word Blindness, our podcast, a lot. There's a very small percent of I believe, and Brent and I, we debate about this all the time. I believe I innately I was born with confidence. Like my parents would say, like there was a time we were like, oh wow, she's being confident right now. She should not be confident right now. What is going on? I was really born with that. My dad is a very similar person, but I also had parents that were really big cheerleaders. My parents did get divorced when I was young, but they were really supportive and big cheerleaders in it. So
yeah.
I knew what I was good at and I knew what I wasn't good at.
Right.
And I was able to really have that like go through my head. Even these jobs that I was not qualified for, I was like, I know I'll figure it out because I know I can figure anything out. Like I know I will figure it out. I'll either find someone that's going to be able to help me figure it out or do it for me. That's a lot of times. See, I would have someone that I could seek and find and know how I could, be supportive. And so it was always this very interesting kind of like I really very rarely had the imposter syndrome, even though if you look at it on paper, you would think, okay, you're surprised that you didn't. It just was something that I just kind of didn't. So there was, though, my house, we are messy. And there was always times where it was like, people would be like, oh, we want to come over. And it'd be like, oh my God, okay, now I got it. Like, so that stuff, like people always would say like, oh, do you have it all together? I don't know. Cause I didn't always present of having it all together. Like I let my kids dress themselves. So they were constantly mismatching. We lived in a town that was like, everyone was perfect. Everyone had the perfect bow. And I would be like, no, my kids are dressing themselves. I want them to dress themselves. I want them to be unique. So I embrace that a lot. Like if if I'm not looking absolutely perfect, I'm okay with that because guess what? I have a good personality. So there's a lot of my friends and my mom would always say like, there's things about you that like totally make sense. And then there's things that are like, okay, that doesn't match at all. What is that? That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a lot of things that just innately as my personality, I was able to kind of get through. Now, being an adult and being in the role that I am with FedTech, I mean, I was not allowed to take chemistry. I can't do math. And I am in STEM. I'm a woman in STEM. I'm the chief communications officer for a biotech company. And I said yes to that job. They were actually a client of mine because I had my own business and I was a storytelling consultant because I did start a podcast in 2019 that was called Your Next Stop that I recently just finished season 5 and I've put that on the shelf. It's like, okay, that's a period of my time that I learned so much about myself. And So what's really interesting with that is I am I mean, I'm talking to PhD people that are brilliant and they're book brilliant. And I think
Right?
there's something interesting about that, but I also am not wowed by that. Like, I don't care that
No.
you learned it in a book. I actually innately know it because I just
Right.
innately know it, but I don't do it in an ego way. But it is an
Yeah.
interesting field to navigate because you can see where it's so interesting. Even people at certain levels, you can see their insecurities. And I am just curious about people in general. So I love
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
questions and learning about how people tick and why they tick that way. And so the company FetTech, Danielle Fetty, who's also dyslexic. So my
Oh, wow.
co-founder and CEO, we work really well together because we have
Hmm.
this big brain kind of capacity, and our dyslexia is different, but there's a lot of similarities. Like, some of our colleagues are like, it's
Hmm.
so interesting. You guys do that so much the same. It's crazy. And we know that
Right.
that's our dyslexia. Do you know? I mean, and I think I
Yeah.
shared it. Like my oldest is dyslexic. So he
Oh,
even went to a
wow.
school specifically for dyslexia, and being a parent having to navigate that. So
Hmm.
as someone that also struggles with that, having to do all the paperwork and reading all that stuff, like, so throughout my life, there's been periods of time that it's been like, oh my God, this is really weighing me down. And that's where,
Yeah.
your dyslexia, I mean, your anxiety ticks up, right? Because it's like,
Hmm.
okay, how can I make sure I have all of these things done? And as I said to you just a second ago, a lot of mine was also, I never wanted like my kids to ever feel like, oh, mom's a spaz, she didn't get that done. Like that was like a big
Right.
thing for me. Like, nope,
Yeah.
you had your library book because 3 days ago I made sure our schedules were lined up, that I knew you had that, but I checked my schedule 50 times to make sure that didn't fall through the cracks. Like and I am not like type A at all. And so that's like a very interesting,
Yeah.
but I made myself be
Hmm.
super tightly wound around that. And as I've gotten older and now in the roles that I'm in, I'm very good at being like, no, like I am very, there's times where like people are like, you, you were so authentic. And I'm like, there's no other way for me to be. Like, I could not, like,
Right.
I am me. Like, there's no way
Yeah.
that I'm going to be able to fake it. Like, and even that, even when I
Hmm.
was doing content creating, when I had my own storytelling company, like, I am just who I am, and you can do that. I know others that are dyslexic and maybe ADHD that had to put more of a front on, and that's where their anxiety comes in. Because as you said, they were like
Hmm.
constantly being like, "No, this is the front I have to do." Even if I wanted to try to pretend to be something else,
Right.
I couldn't. It's just not in my. It's just not my DNA. And so it's a very interesting ride being 51 now, and knowing, and then also knowing, like, now my oldest is in college. He's in a freshman year in
Hmm.
college, going through his experience with him when I was just getting diagnosed. It
Yeah.
brings a lot of anxiety up. Every year, September, I get massive, like 3 weeks before school starts. And it's so interesting. And doing the Dyslexia Exposed with Brent, really, like, he's
Hmm.
like, you know that you get that way. And I was like, I do, but I've never put words to it. I was like, it's all of my stuff. It's all of me being like, okay, what teachers am I going to have to fake? Where am I going to have to go and pretend like I know what I'm doing? All of those things that I know you can relate to. That's
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
lot of my anxiety before, like with kids as well. Like, oh my God, I need to protect them because I didn't feel protected in school. So how can I be that person for them? That's a lot of
Right.
anxiety because how can you do that? Like, how you can't, like,
Wow.
yelling at, like, getting involved in school because it's an IEP, which is an individual education plan. So when you have a diagnosis, like making sure those teachers knew that my son wasn't slow, he was smart. And if they treated him anyway, I would come in and rip faces off. But then being like,
Yeah.
if you guys are doing what you're meant to do, you won't hear from me at all. And so it's kind of playing that line as a parent,
Yeah.
as a businesswoman, as a mom, like, there's times where you're going to have more seasons of anxiety.
Yeah. Well, and you had a lot of what they call like protective factors, as it were. That's what we would say
Mhm.
in mental health and stuff, right? But I'm sure as you've been doing this podcast and stuff and advocating for dyslexia, I think also what I was asking is what are some of the, underlying issues that so many dyslexics face, with the anxiety and, with the mental health stuff? Because and I'm 52, and I never connected my dyslexia with my addiction until now. It's the
Mhm.
weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Like, I just, I don't know. It was like it was always in this separate box. But I think that, and I don't know, Brent was telling me that almost all people that struggle with addiction or it's the struggle that have dyslexia have addiction and other mental health
There's a lot.
challenges.
Mhm.
And I had no idea,
Mhm.
so I guess really it sounds like what you're doing is trying to bring awareness to all of this because I didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't know that when I was blanking out when I was like in 8th grade that I was having anxiety because the teacher was, there looking at me and I couldn't figure it out. And then he would say, "Oh, she just stares off into space." And
Mhm.
then I thought the blankings out. Like one time, a couple times my foot would freeze on an accelerator in a car and I crashed these ATCs and this was anxiety, but then it was related and I always thought that was the dyslexia, that I was stupid, but there was some trauma at home. So really I was having these panic attacks when I was a kid. I mean, it was all mixed up. And
Yeah.
I think like, how do people, and at 52, I'm like finally kind of sorting this
Yeah.
out. Right. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, and I think what you said, I think when you're dyslexic and ADHD, you have more of a sensitive nervous system that is known. So there's things that you're going to be more sensitive to, period. And it is like feelings and feeling people. We're deeper. We can feel. We have bigger emotions. We don't know how to regulate them all the time. So when you're
yeah.
constantly being told like you're too much or you're not focused or you're not all these things, that is going to ding your armor. And it doesn't matter how
Yeah.
thick your armor is, that's going to continue to ding. And as you said, look, when you're sitting in class and trying to figure out, oh my God, the teacher's coming to me and talking, you're constantly doing that. So, like, anytime I walked into English, I would already know where I would wanted to sit, especially if it was a day of reading out loud. So I would go in, and this is all anxiety. You would go in and be like, okay, where am I going to sit? If I don't get that seat, I know I'm gonna have to read out loud. And if I have to read out loud, then I got to count how many kids are reading in front of me so I can like look at the paragraph and try to
Oh
do
my
it.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
all of that, and when you bringing that up, like you can feel your anxiety
Yeah.
heightening because it's like, oh my God, I hate that feeling.
I
That's
don't even remember it. That's the other thing is with dyslexia, we grow up, I don't, there's like all these blank spots, but when you say that, I can feel it,
you
even though I
can
don't
feel it.
remember it. How
Well,
weird is that?
no, but not at all. But that's mental. That's your body protecting you. So, like my
Right?
third grade, I couldn't remember why. Anytime anyone said third grade, I would get like a visceral like, oh my God, something happened in third grade. What the fuck happened in third grade? And I know now it was when the entire class went to gifted and talented and I went to special reading, and it was like, all my friends running up to me being like, where did you go? And I was like, I had to go read the Blue Dolphin. And they're like, oh my God, that sucks. We get to miss school and we get to do this and we get to do that and we get to do this, and it's all creative and we're the smart ones and and it was like, oh my God, okay, I guess I'm not smart, I'm not creative, I'm not these things that you then tell yourself. But just give you an example. My uncle just recently passed and is my godfather, amazing man. And
Mhm.
I was asked to read. He had wanted two people to read out of everyone in the family. And I was one of the people that he wanted to read.
Uh-huh.
And my first was like, oh my God. And then I literally went into panic mode inside. And I was like, okay, can you guys get me what I need to read? And they were like, yeah, we'll go to a couple of days. And I was like, no, I need to see it now.
Right.
Because I knew I was also reading a church thing. And I was like, those are going
Mhm.
to be words that I have no idea. I need to practice it. And when you're dyslexic, you read very slow and it's very like, it doesn't flow, and it sounds like you're dumb. When if I
Mhm.
read out loud, it sounds like a dumb. I have to take pauses. It does not flow. And it's still that
Mhm.
day I can read, but it takes a little bit of time. And so I literally was having, and I could still I couldn't catch my breath. And I was like,
Mm.
oh my gosh. Like, oh God, I really thought I evolved. This is ridiculous. Like I've done so much
Right?
work. I've done so
Right?
much work. I
Yeah.
feel like I've evolved. But that little thing was like, I had to stand at the podium. I don't mind. I love being on stage and talking.
Mhm.
I like to have attention on me. I will say it. That's where I thrive. I really am good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But reading something is
Mhm.
completely different. I can tell you,
Wow.
I can do speeches. I can talk off the cusp. If someone said, hey, I need you to go and public speak about this, and I could literally jump up with no practice. I could do that pretty much for anything. Now, even in the
Wow.
medical field, like I'm like, yeah, I'll go talk. And they're like, okay, what are you going to talk about? And I'm like, I got it. Trust me. I'm very fortunate that I can do that. And then they're like, oh my God, you
Wow.
just sounded like a huge expert. I'm like, I can absorb what a lot of people say. I've
Uh-huh.
been now in rooms that I've learned all about what I'm doing. I can do that. The second you say, hey, can you read off a presentation or can you read this? I freeze up because I can't. I need to make sure I know what the words are. There's a lot of words I can't pronounce. I can't sound
Yeah.
it out. And so it brings all these things up. So the amount of work that we've done is different. And I will take you to this is really cool. So when I had my storytelling consultant business, what I would do is I would go through the different chapters of people's lives. And what I talk about
Mm-hmm.
is we have feelings and we have memory feelings and then we have memories. And people are like, what does that mean? And I'm like, memory feelings are someone says something and you get a feeling, but you actually don't have the visual memory of it. And
Yeah.
those are really important. Those are
Mm-hmm.
more important than people realize. So when people are also doing deep work, with therapists and stuff like that, if you keep talking about something and you get like a chill or like
Mm-hmm.
like a really strong feeling, happy or sad, it's something that you need to explore because there's something
Yeah.
behind it. And it could be like a great memory that you just, it's like a happy thing that you don't realize that there's something
Right.
tied to it. And it's really your path.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to, be your path to go. And so it is a very interesting thing when, as you just said, you get like this, but something was not great happened at that time, but you
Right. And
can't put your
that's what's
finger on it.
so crazy about, dealing with addiction and trauma and anxiety and PTSD and all that stuff is a lot of times, yeah, you get the memory, but there's a blank there, but then it's triggers. So it triggers, we call it triggers in recovery where, you're having an anxiety disorder or what always happened to me is I'd feel like I was 4 and I couldn't understand why. And it was because it was a male authority figure because like I told you when we were talking off air, my dad, of course, is a math teacher, and he would be like,
Oh,
I just don't understand why you can't get this. I just, and I'd be like, well, I don't know. Why don't you tell me why I don't get it?
right,
And
right.
so I would have those triggers and shame, and I'd turn all red. And finally, I had to realize, you know what? That was then, this is now, this guy who's, male authority figure, whatever you want to call it. He puts his pants on just like me. We're the same. But you have to go back and understand what that is, right? We got
Hmm.
to know what it is before we can fix it, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So like, going back to the question you said, so like for dyslexics, think about how many times you're reading. And the reason why I brought the funeral up is like that I'm like a confident, very successful 51-year-old woman that I literally had to like calm myself, like in the
Yeah.
car. Like I was like sweating. I was like, my husband's like, what is going on? And he doesn't, bless him, he wants to
Doing the
understand.
Brene Brown Superwoman.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry. Okay.
And no, I love that, but it's so true. And I also like, I had a friend that was like, well, no one cares how you read. Like it doesn't matter. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not the point. Like that's not the point. You're missing the point completely. It's not
Yeah.
me worrying about what the audience is thinking. I don't do that. I'm very fortunate. I don't care what the audience is thinking. I don't care what people think about me. That's not it. It's the uncomfortableness of me not like I it just brings me back to a really uncomfortable time in my life of
Yeah.
having
Yep.
to be called out and not being able to do it and not knowing, I wasn't diagnosed until I was in college, and not knowing that this is what it is. And it was like, okay, you have something that's different, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's it's just a different world. So we have to think about how many times we have to read out loud all the emails I get, all the things that
Yeah.
when it's brought up, people don't realize the day-to-day things and functions that it takes to read, to left and rights, to do all of these things. You're doing it multiple times, and if you don't struggle in it, you have no idea. And you can say, oh yeah, that's interesting, but in every kind of thing that you do, it is that way. So it's going to be brought up and keep bringing your anxiety, your
Yeah.
mental health, if you haven't dealt with it.
And that's so interesting because we have a lot of similarities, but then there's this opposite thing where because I was told it was a reading issue, and I'd been reading since I was a kid. I loved reading. I read all the time. And so, but then the self-esteem with the other disabilities is what ended up happening for me, which is different, is like when I got into radio and stuff, I literally had to script everything. So I would go on stage and I had to have a script all the time, because if I didn't have a script, I would get nervous, or you might see that I was dumb because I didn't say everything perfect. And people I don't do it as much now, but earlier in my radio career, people were like, "You write out every break?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Oh, yeah. That's so interesting.
But I
Right.
was really good. Like wow, like I wasn't, they call it phoning it in, which is when you just, time and temperature or whatever in radio. I was really good at it, but just like you, like I had to, like, it had to be really good, not so much now, but and my husband's like you, he's totally extemporaneous, and he has the opposite problem, high IQ, to the point where he's almost weird. So like we're both weird in these different ways, but where you're extemporaneous, I'm always afraid to be extemporaneous. So I have to script everything out. So I don't understand the not reading part, but yet there's the things like every time, just like screwing this mic on this morning, lefty loosey, righty tighty, constantly. Here, you figure the tip out because I can't, stuff like that. But gosh, that's so interesting. So what do we do, Juliet? How do we, this, and I'm so thankful that both you and I had pretty good upbringing, pretty good. We had a lot of addiction in our family, and codependency and anxiety and mental health, but that's a whole nother story. But I was never told by my parents I was stupid. They put me in dyslexic school. So, we both kind of had, we had good schooling. We had good, you were in sports, you have excelled. This isn't the case for other kids. Like, tell me about what we do to, so let me give you an example. Someone comes in for addiction treatment. Okay. We ask them about all these things. Nobody ever asks, are you dyslexic? Like the whole DSM, you go through a short, they call it a I forget what they call it. It's a quick mental health analysis to see if they need, mental, what the risk factors are. Are they schizophrenic? Are they, and they will ask like ADHD, but there's nothing about dyslexia or anything like that. It doesn't even factor in. And I just think, how do we bring awareness to this? What do we do? How do we educate the world that, these people aren't stupid? We like to go, oh, well, Einstein was dyslexic, which is great, but that's about as far as it goes, as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what we do with the Sopal Foundation. So, as I said, I am the Chief Communications Officer for FedTech, but my life work and what I do, hold on one second. I'm so sorry. I have to pause.
Oh, no.
Is that okay? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I can edit. See, where my dyslexia comes in is I am on 8 different tracks when I do interviews, as you can see.
No, I love that. No, and my dogs were out. The gate wasn't up, so they were banging at the door, and I was like,
well, I won't keep you that much longer. Like maybe 15 minutes. Yeah.
No, you're good.
As soon as my camera dies, I get like an hour and a half with this battery. So
no, you're totally good. So, one of my life's work is my passion, other than what I do with FedTech, because I absolutely love that work, is talking about dyslexia. So the Sopal Foundation, that is Brent's foundation. What we do is we are creating so many things that we can't talk about because they're in the works. But there's so much education out there. Having the understanding of what dyslexia, ADHD, we call it the 5 Ds. So I don't like the word neurodiversity. I actually don't like it all because it lumps everything together and there's no understanding. Like, okay, you're neurodiverse. I have no idea what that means. Are you autistic? Are you dyslexic? Do you have anxiety? Are you dyscalculia? Are you, dysgraphia? Like what is it? And I think there's like so many different things under that umbrella. My thing with the education system, it's so broken, so broken. And there's as much as everyone's like, oh, there's dyslexia is being talked about, it is being studied by PhDs. And don't get me started, because they are the people that are good with the books. They don't have dyslexia. So they don't understand. They're telling us how we're supposed to learn, but they're just doing it out of books. And like, I have a huge problem with the medical world. It's like, that's where it's like, you need life experiences. You need people that go through it, that have talked about it, that can share. Like, don't tell me, you're telling me how I'm supposed to read, but you are not dyslexic. That makes zero sense. So we are doing a lot of stuff with the Sopal Foundation where we're bringing, awareness. I mean, we do that through word blindness, but then all the people that we help. So we help a lot of people through their IEPs, their 504s, how to navigate the school system. Because the other thing is there's 50% of prison inmates are dyslexic. 50%. That is not okay. And that is a disgrace. It is awful. And it's because of areas that don't have money, right? So like my son went to a private dyslexic school, very fortunate. I'm not even going to tell you how much it cost because it's absolutely obnoxious. It's more than college. We were very fortunate that we were in a position at the time to be able to do that. He was lucky. He was really lucky. He's one of the lucky ones because he had, but then he did have to go back to public school, which he had tools that he was able to hold on to, but it was like, okay. And he and my nephew, who is also dyslexic, were on our podcast, Word Blindness, and they talked about their experience through school. And the one thing my son said that still like pings my heart, he's like, the public school education system is not meant for kids like me. That's what he said. He knew every way to get out of everything. He's like, I never learned what I learned is how to navigate the system and how to get out of things, get through. He learned a lot of life lessons, which I will never take away. Like, that is a brilliant thing. And I'm so fortunate that he didn't get too beat up, chewed up and spit out, because that's what happens to a lot of kids. They get chewed up and spit out because they can't mentally handle the kicking when they're down, teachers saying the most idiotic things to people, and they don't realize, because a lot of teachers, not all, go into education because they were good at school. They don't understand that there's another way of thinking. They don't understand that someone is going to struggle, especially if I had a conversation with someone and I say, like, if you even knew when I got on my SATs or my grade point average when I was in high school, you would be like, oh, she must have been fooling around. Like, and no, I wasn't. I was trying.
And then, we still have a higher IQ. See, and it makes no sense.
Right.
But I can relate to that, because I was in the dyslexic school till 4th grade. I got straight A's because, again, I could read but couldn't do math. And so it was all, tracing letters and everything. Well, then I went to public school and I got all C's. And that's when the teachers were like, she's stupid. So I was like, okay, fine. Well, then I might as well just start smoking cigarettes. Then I started drinking. Then I started using drugs. And I never realized until now that I was almost like a different person before that happened. I saw that report card and it was like my world was over, but I just sort of stuffed it. And then I just started becoming the bad girl and cussing and swearing and drinking and everything else, because why not? If you say I'm stupid, then I'll just be kind of like the way you were like, I'll just be stupid, your ass or what, and I think that right there is key, is understanding, helping families and teachers understand, like, they're not stupid. They're, like you said, there's a different way to learn. And I don't even know what that is. I'm still trying to figure out how I learn, because I don't really know.
Right.
So, I mean, talk to me about that. Like, nobody ever told me how to learn.
No, and it's and I think it's very subjective to each person. But like everything you just said there, it's easier to go down the bad. And Montgomery talks about it. The classes he was in with the kids, like when you're in public school and you are diagnosed with something, you're put into a system of, like, it's really sad, because some of the kids that he was with didn't have learning disabilities. They actually were not smart, or they had other things. And it was like, I mean, I remember him calling me one day after class. He's like, you have to get me out of this class. He's like, Mom, there's a girl that she's got a disorder that she can't stop talking.
Right.
And he's ADHD and dyslexic. So they're putting a kid that can't stop talking in with the kids that have attention issues.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, I can't get anything done. And his ADHD was not like mine. I was the kid that couldn't sit still. But again, we've been using homeopathy. He's never been on meds, but we've been using homeopathy. He's the kid that sits still, so he does not have to get called on. But he would sit still, and like all of his energy would go just to sit still. So he went under the radar. So he didn't get bothered, right? He didn't get bothered by the teachers and figure it out.
Yeah.
So
Oh
there's
my
all these
gosh.
different things. And as you said, like you doing well and then all of a sudden not doing well, it's this like, okay, and then teacher saying to you, you're constantly not trying. Like that's just focus. If you focus like you did if you tried like you tried on the field hockey field and lacrosse field and scored the goals that you did and did that here, do you know, like you don't care. And so it is one of those things. And I will never forget, my mom said, and she's like, even when she still says it, it breaks her heart. When I was little, I went home one day and it must have been a real crappy day at school. And I said, I'm so glad that God just made me stupid on the inside, not on the outside. And what I was saying was that I obviously thought I was pretty. So I liked my looks, and no one from the outside could tell.
Right.
Because of the way I looked, how dumb I was. And that's I remember my mom saying, she's like, that killed me. And so it's teaching teachers to look for different things. Like, hey, gym teacher, did Johnny just go like right every time you said left? Maybe let's get him screened. Maybe he might have some learning issues. Hey, English teacher or first grade teacher, that little one is now in fourth grade and they're still flipping things. That's like a very small percentage because everyone thinks dyslexia is you're flipping your B's and D's. I happen to do that, I know. But like Brent doesn't. And a lot of people don't. Like it's like my son doesn't.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And yet I have 2 master's degrees, and not to brag, but I always do, because I can say, look, I'm dyslexic, but I did all of this. And somehow I figured out how to read, but I realize when I do read, I skip a lot of words. I can speed read. We just learn to do weird stuff.
You do, you know? But that's when you said you don't know how you learn. That is how you learn. Like you've taught yourself how to learn.
Yeah. I mean, true. That's true. That's true. Oh my gosh.
And all of us are different. So like, it's the understanding, the education, and navigating the school system is a huge one. So if a parent, because even when my son was diagnosed and I had the knowledge, I had the resources, I've never felt so alone. And that's when I drank, like there was a period of time where I was drinking way too much because I was like, I just need to make sure that this kid is safe. Like, it was when the kids were in bed. So like they weren't aware of it, but like, I'm like, I need to make sure that I protect this kid to the like, I don't want him to get like kicked, like I was kicked. And you still, I mean, there's been like 3 or 4 situations. I shouldn't even say that he's shared with me that like teachers would say, I mean, English senior year, he advocates for himself. That's the other thing, is finding out early so you can give that kid self-esteem. That's what we are teaching and saying. Like, if you can give the kid the self-esteem early, I, again, was very fortunate that I had it, right? I had it. So I was able to be like, okay, I'm going to fight for myself. I don't like the way you made me feel, teacher. I'm going to stick up for myself. I'm not going to be disrespectful. I'm not going to be that kid, but I'm going to make sure I stick up for myself. And senior year, Shakespeare, that's what they learn. Okay. Senior year, it's all Shakespeare. That's all they're reading. Fucking torture. Okay. So as Montgomery did before every teacher, and he still does this, and this is something that we taught him from an early age, you reach out to the teacher, you either email them or you get face-to-face, let them know you're dyslexic, let them know you have other learning issues, even though they have your 504, he is an IEP, but even though they have your IEP, which is an individual education plan, goes with you wherever. It shows like the accommodations you get notes, you get preferential seating, there's all these different things, which all sounds great. Okay. That all sounds great. However, the teachers don't read it for the first 2 weeks. Like it's like they may have like 15 or 16 poor teachers as they're doing it. So this is not a knock to teachers, but literally he would go the first or second day of school and say, I just want you to know, I know you haven't gotten to my IEP yet, but I am dyslexic. And so any help, like I want to go to college, I want to do well. So any help that you can give me, I would really appreciate it. I will work hard in your class. I will respect you, blah. And then he would leave. He charms. He knows how to get, like, he knows, he would ask them a personal question. He knows how to connect because that's his gift. He knows how to connect. So he literally says to the teacher, I'm dyslexic. And the English teacher goes, oh, that sucks. This class is going to be really tough. The guy, he goes,
oh, that's encouraging.
Thanks.
Jeez.
I'm just going to say my maiden name is Williams, so I'm just going to use that. Like, thanks, Mr. Williams. I'm very aware of that. So, and he's like, I'm so sorry. That just came out, but like, this is going to be really hard for you. And he's like, right. So any help you can give me, not have it be so hard, because I am going to college to play soccer and I need to not fail this class. So like, how can we work together? Mid-year, he's like, Mom, he doesn't fucking get it. He doesn't understand. He basically had to figure out every way. He's like, if you get a call, this is where I am. Like during test time, but think about the amount of stress on that child that he had to figure out every way to get around or take a test to make sure he passed, that he wouldn't get in trouble, because that's not what he wants to do. But he's like, this teacher doesn't get it. Like the teacher's like, well, no, it's Shakespeare. That's hard for anyone. You're dyslexic. It's awful, right? So different things like that. Other thing is, there's a lot of schools and a lot of states that if you are dyslexic, and this comes from Yale, you do not have to take a second language. You do not have to take a foreign language. A lot of people don't know that. For dyslexics, it's really tough. Most, not all, it's really difficult to learn a second language. Obviously, you're trying to learn the first. So you have the right to say to the school, my child's not taking a foreign language, but they're not going to offer it because the school's not going to do that. So you need to have the tools. So that's what we do at the Sobel Foundation. We educate parents on how to navigate the system, and we also give them the tools so they can understand and feel really empowered. And then we also give like teachers like, hey, maybe like here's a little couple things to pick up on, right? Because in college, in education, you're reading maybe 4 sentences of what dyslexia is. It's actually so sad that these teachers do not have that. And some universities, so I'm sure there's going to be some people listening, they're like, that's not true. It is true, because we've done tons of research. There are some universities that are better, that do teach it and have understanding. But for the most part, there's not. I mean, there's incredible universities that Brent and I have been in contact with about doing some extra stuff with them. And head of an education program of one of the top schools, everyone knows the name of this school, the top person that runs the education department did not realize that certain states on an IEP, you cannot put the word dyslexic. So I can't put on Montgomery's IEP that he's dyslexic. It says specified learning disability. This is my same problem with neurodiversity. It's like, and the reason why you can't put it, because certain states, if you have dyslexic, you have to have a certain amount of reading specialists, which costs more money. You have to have certain resources, which cost money. So they don't do it. So certain states are like, nope, specified learning disability. As a parent, I knew, because of the work that I do and because of my background, coming from Connecticut, where I was allowed to have it, going to New York. And I said to New York, guess what? I'm not going away until you put it somewhere. You will put it somewhere in a description. You're not putting specified learning disability, because this kid, no one's going to think he struggles. They're going to think, oh, the parents just did something so he can get straight A's instead of a B here and there, right? They pulled some strings, these people, because this kid does not struggle, because you would never know. Ever, until all of a sudden you're like, he's severely dysgraphic, which is the handwriting. You can't read his handwriting. And so people think he's, it is insane what this kid has accomplished, but he's had to fight. I've had to fight. And that's what we at the Sobel Foundation do. We help parents get that fight and know what they need to do to be able to advocate for themselves.
What a bureaucracy. No, it's true. It's a bureaucratic mess. And you see the same thing in addiction and stuff, where you have to say it's not as bad as it is, because if the ASAM criterion, because then then you would have to have psychiatrists, meanwhile people are dying from opiate addiction, and it's like, come on, people, these are people, they're dying. Do we have to play these games? And because it's all about the funding and the and what we really need is just people who care.
Exactly.
Like I told you, I mean, I had a teacher that said I could write, and it changed my life. He didn't do anything bizarre. He probably didn't even know I was dyslexic, but it was just, he just cared. It's like we're all about science and finding cures and this and that, but people just want to like be cared about, be
Yep.
understood, I think. And if we could bring that back, I mean, that would be huge. What about just, investing in someone who learns differently or something like that? I mean, because when I went back to public school, they didn't even know that I had been to the dyslexic school. I mean, that was the thing. So,
It is. It's a messed up
wow.
world, but
Oh my
we're trying
gosh.
to straighten it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's also the stuff that I do with Vet Tech. And that's for a
Nice.
whole nother thing. But yes, making sure the medical world that we need to be better. We need to be better. So
Hmm.
that's my position on earth. I'm here to educate people, to be able to give them the tools in a couple different realms. And
Nice. And
yeah,
it's gotten better, definitely. Like, things are evolving and changing, and the work you're doing is definitely helping. Like, I can see a lot of tools. Like, they even have like left-handed stores. So, because I always say I'm a left-handed dyslexic kid who grew up in Alaska in the 70s. When we were in San Francisco, and I'm like, it's all. Of course, by then I'd learned everything right-handed. So we're all ambidextrous and,
right.
all that stuff. But it's definitely better. Well, so, oh my God, we could talk for another hour, but tell me how we can get involved, how people can connect with you, your work, those sorts of things.
Yes. So I'm on every social media: LinkedIn, Juliet Hahn, Juliet Hahn, Instagram, Juliet Hahn. I am Juliet Hahn is my podcast. If you want to know more about what I do at Vet Tech, that's juliet.n.hahn. And then the sopalfoundation.org. We're always looking for people to get involved, but also, it's a foundation. So funding, if you're ever like,
Right. Yeah.
hey, I want to donate, like I want to donate this month, where can I do it? Sopal Foundation is definitely a great place. And then if you want to learn more about what I do at Vet Tech and in the medical world, we are a wound healing product. It's an ECM, it's an extracellular matrix. It's fascinating what our product does. It's all natural because it's so important, but it basically triggers your body to heal itself, to get like what your body needs. So really interesting, incredible things. You can go to Vet Tech, and that's FETTECH.com. And then all of our companies are umbrellaed there because we have 2 FDA cleared products. One's a powder and one's a gel.
Awesome.
Yeah. Really
Julia, did you give me your website?
So
I think you did.
And I also have a personal website where all my podcasts are, but I
Cool.
couldn't even, but that's, you can find me on the Instagram stuff, but yes.
Okay.
Sopalfoundation.org and then fettech.com. And
Fantastic.
then I am Juliet Hahn everywhere. And the reason why I am is because there's a professor at the Citadel that has my same name, that's older than me and got all my handles.
Awesome. Juliet, this has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.